Papahānaumokuākea is one of the most important places on Earth, with major cultural and scientific implications. However, growing concerns about threats to the place continue to rise, like alien and invasive species, marine debris, and climate change.
My hope is that there continue to be efforts to bring in the Hawaiian community and support projects and ideas to maintain our connections to that space through being able to conduct different types of cultural practices and maintain our connection to those places so it doesn't become forgotten and lost, because there was a long period of time where I feel like that the purpose of people going there was very extractive or based on warfare and military purposes, and there's a lot of damage that people did up there by introducing like rabbits that caused extinctions of species on some islands, or people who are killing the birds for their feathers, the seals for the fur. So there's I guess just trying to huli that idea that that place is only for taking from.
My name is Cleo Paavaris, and this is Hanohano Nā Kūpuna, exploring Papahānaumokuākea. In this episode, we review a century of protections given to Papahānaumokuākea and whether they've done enough. Today, Papahānaumokuākea is protected by multiple government agencies. However, Native Hawaiians have been protecting and stewarding over the place since time immemorial. Brad Wong, whose voice you might remember from prior episodes, describes this relationship and more.
Papahānaumokuākea is a very complex system of overlapping protections. I think a lot of it, for me personally, I think a lot of it began when our Kūpuna were traveling there because they understood it as an ʻāina Kūpuna, or as a ʻāina akua, right? Considering it a place where our akua were, that has a specific connotation, a specific, personal actions that can only take place in a ʻāina akua, or considering it as po. We when we think about the realm of po being beyond moku mana mana, and that being this place of akua and things like that, that has additional connotations for what that is, right? And Kekuewa Kikila is, and Santipu and many others have explained a lot of that and talked a lot about how those things are intertwined with kind of our traditional context of the kumulipo and things like that. But I think really those protections really started from our Kūpuna.
In contrast, government protections for Papahānaumokuākea have been evolving for just over 100 years. The first governmental protective order came in 1903, when President Theodore Roosevelt signed Executive Order No. 199A, which placed Midway Atoll under the control of the United States Navy after reports had emerged that seabirds were being poached for their feathers and eggs. A few years later, in 1909, Executive Order No. 1019 created the Hawaiian Birds Reservation around islands from Nihoa to Kure Atoll to further protect these islands and their resources. In 1940, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Presidential Proclamation No. 2416 to expand protections from the Hawaiian Islands Bird Reservation to the Hawaiian Islands National Wildlife Refuge. It was managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and broadened the refuge purposes to protect all wildlife. Efforts to protect and manage marine and Hawaiian cultural resources with Native Hawaiians did not begin until the establishment of the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands Coral Reef Ecosystem Reserve that was done by President Clinton in 2000, in response to calls from Native Hawaiian fishers and cultural practitioners. As a result of public comments and negotiations, President Clinton also signed the 2000 amendments to the National Marine Sanctuaries Act and authorized the creation of the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands Reserve. Brad Wong describes how all of these protections layer on top of each other.
Fish and Wildlife Service, I forget what specific year it is, right? They had a bird sanctuary over the place, and then you have the islands themselves being considered refuges, and then you have You know, the marine protected areas, right? You've got a state marine refuge, then you've got the what is that called? The reserve itself, the NOAA Marine Reserve, and then now you have the monument overlapped onto all of that, right? So these are all like when one layer of protection went on, it didn't replace any of the others, so to say, right? So these all of these protections are really helping to enhance kind of enhance the place, enhance our understanding of the place, provide resources to or expertise to better understand the place, and you know, give us a better relationship to what happens there. So
in 2006, President George W. Bush signed Presidential Proclamation 8031, establishing the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands Marine National Monument, with boundaries to include all protections thus far: the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands Coral Reef Ecosystem Reserve, the Midway Atoll National Wildlife Refuge, the Hawaiian Islands National Wildlife Refuge, the Battle of Midway, National Memorial, Kure Atoll Wildlife Sanctuary, and the State of Hawaii Northwestern Hawaiian Islands Marine Refuge. The monument designation promotes coordinated management of the unique resources within the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands region.
The Northwestern Hawaiian Islands are a beautiful and special place. Our duty is to use the land and seas wisely, or sometimes not use them at all. The national monument we're establishing today covers nearly 140,000 square miles, larger than 46 of our 50 states. It's a big deal.
This presidential proclamation states that all cultural activities must be pono, defining it within the document as appropriate, correct, and deemed necessary by traditional standards in the Hawaiian culture. All of these designations layer one on top of the other, providing more and more protection for Papahānaumokuākea. But monument status was maybe one of the most important protective measures yet, as described in the documentary Safe Haven.
As a national marine monument, the fragile lands and waters of the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands are protected by strong regulations and enforcement tools. 6 principles guide and direct these protections. The National Monument preserves access for Native Hawaiian cultural activities. It provides for carefully regulated educational and scientific activities. It will enhance visitation in a special area around Midway Atoll. It prohibits unauthorized access. It will phase out commercial fishing over a 5-year period. And it bans the extraction of resources and the dumping of waste.
The Marine National Monument requires a tremendous amount of coordination and collaboration.
Papahānaumokuākea being managed by 4 different agencies, one of which is the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, one of which is the State of Hawaii, NOAA, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I think being managed by 4 different entities, there's a lot that could go wrong, but that it's really working, and that Papahānaumokuākea can be a model for how there can be collaborative management of a place and how culture can be integrated into that management.
That's Kevin O'Brien.
My name is Kevin O'Brien, and I'm the president and founder of the Papahānaumokuākea Marine Debris Project, which is a nonprofit that we started a couple of years ago to make sure that cleanups within Papahānaumokuākea could continue into the future.
Kevin works alongside James Morioka.
My name is James Morioka, and I'm the executive director of a nonprofit organization called the Papahānaumokuākea Marine Debris Project, or PMDP.
So currently, James and I run the Papahānaumokuākea Marine Debris Project, which is a nonprofit that we started 4 years ago to essentially assume responsibility for the cleanups of Papahānaumokuākea from the federal government. We've been going out 2 times a year for 1 month at a time on a charter vessel to head up into Papahānaumokuākea and clean up the areas that are the most in need of attention, cleaning up the marine debris accumulation hotspots and focusing on entanglement hazards for Hawaiian monk seals and the green sea turtles, and ingestion hazards for seabirds.
The issue of marine debris was first noticed by NOAA Fisheries in the early 90s. And the Marine Debris Project, although we run it here at the nonprofit now, is nothing new. So it got its start in 1996. They had really heavy efforts from 1999 to 2005. And at that time, they basically deemed Papahānaumokuākea free of marine debris, like we're starting with a clean slate. And 115,000 pounds of marine debris is said to accumulate on the reefs of Papahānaumokuākea each year. And so it was up to the federal government to try and fund efforts to remove 115,000 pounds from the reefs every year from 2006 on.
Right now, we're working on a strategy to catch up with a historic backlog of marine debris that's accumulated over the last 15 years of, I guess, less than optimal effort. And so we're working on a strategy to catch up with that while simultaneously keeping up with the annual accumulation that just keeps rolling in.
Scientists predict that, there's about 600,000 pounds of marine debris still out there that's visible and accessible. I really didn't know what I was getting into when I went there, but living among the wildlife, living alone on these islands, really makes you understand how big the world is, how big Hawaii is. Papahānaumokuākea makes up, geographically 75% of the Hawaiian archipelago. And so when you think of the Hawaiian Islands, most people just think about the 8 main inhabited islands. But for 1,300 miles northwest stretch, many islands and atolls, seamounts, reefs, which make up Papahānaumokuākea. And if you were to stretch the Hawaiian archipelago, even though we in Hawaii feel like Hawaii is pretty small, the Hawaiian archipelago would stretch across the continental U.S. from Las Vegas, Nevada to New Orleans, Louisiana. So it's a huge area. If you were to think of all the landmass in Papahānaumokuākea, it's about 200 times less than the shallow water coral reef environments between 0 and 30 feet. And so the marine debris that accumulates in Papahānaumokuākea ends up in the water on the reef, whereas here in the main Hawaiian Islands, we get it here on shore. And so we spend a lot of time, specializing in in-water training, whether that's the free diving aspect or the small boat operations. And we try and remove over 200,000 pounds of marine debris each year from Papahānaumokuākea. And here at PMDP, we've had a pretty short career or short history. We got our first start in 2020, but since then we removed almost 750,000 pounds of marine debris from Papahānaumokuākea. And this year we're scheduled for 79 more days in Papahānaumokuākea. So we hope to eclipse the 1 million mark, 1 million pound mark this year.
Protections for Papahānaumokuākea don't just come from the government. It also requires the work and collaboration of people who want to make a difference. It's a lot of work, but Kevin and James can see the massive impact that PMDP has made.
There's tons of biodiversity, tons of wildlife. There's more than 7,000 marine species, which encompass 23 endangered species. It also makes up 70% of the United States coral reefs. It's just an incredible place. When you think about the critically endangered Hawaiian monk seal, 75% or up to 80% of the Hawaiian monk seal is called Papahānaumokuākea home. And 99% of the green sea turtles that we have here today are born and raised in Papahānaumokuākea. And protecting Papahānaumokuākea really means, positive trickle-down effects for the main Hawaiian Islands. And so when you protect a place like Papahānaumokuākea and you're able to regenerate the coral, regenerate the fish populations, then those fish which transit from Papahānaumokuākea to the main Hawaiian Islands create positive impact. We're seeing that now.
Every time that I visit Papahānaumokuākea, I'm hopeful for multiple reasons, because it seems like the work that we're doing is actually making a difference. The reefs are cleaner, the beaches are cleaner, there's less interactions with the wildlife in places that we've spent a lot of time cleaning. It's really encouraging. And then, going up there every single year for the last 15 years, I feel like we've had the opportunity to have some observations or some insights into the place that you can only get if you've spent a lot of time there. And that those observations are generally observations that are really encouraging, that there may be a big algae bloom that appears to kill most of the coral, but if you come back 2-3 years later, a lot of that may have bounced back, and that things are more resilient than we might think given enough time.
There's a lot of human impacts that are stressing it out right now. Climate change is a big one. Everybody can make an impact in their daily life by trying to make a small change. But marine debris, we think here at PMDP, is one of the most tangible differences that you can make. You're out there, you're disentangling animals, you're removing marine debris from coral reefs, and you're able to let these corals flourish.
Stewardship and service is all about reciprocity. We give because we receive in return. James and Kevin don't just do the work out of selflessness, but because Papahānaumokuākea has had an impact on them too.
When we leave Honolulu, it takes about, a day and a half before we go from Ao to Po, which is, the real spiritual feeling of Papahānaumokuākea. And during that time, there's a lot of self-reflection. And then once you enter Papahānaumokuākea, it's a really special, deep feeling that you feel within. You may go to a place where all you hear is the birds because the birds overwhelm the noise of the wind. When you go across the water, you go from the deep blue water and crossing all the different shades until you get to the really shallow water blues over the sand and the coral. Truly, truly an incredible place. And, largely uninhabited islands and atolls, compared to the main Hawaiian Islands. So when you go there, the wildlife, this is their home. They may have never seen a human before. And so you see that their behavior is absolutely different, whether that's from the sharks, the birds, the turtles, the monk seals. Very, very incredible place.
You can pull up to a beach and have so many sea turtles on the beach that it's hard to even walk around. I don't think we can even comprehend that kind of abundance these days. And I think that that's initially what you see when you enter Papahānaumokuākea is just extreme abundance, especially a place like Kuʻahelani that has like 1 million nesting pairs of albatross. You can barely walk around because there's barely any room for anything else that isn't taken up by an albatross at that place. And so it's just a really incredible experience, because it is a window into the past as far as what our ancestors, in many places, not just Hawaii, may have witnessed before we sort of didn't do a great job of managing our resources.
We kilo, we're really connecting to the place first, sights and sounds, understanding how that ecosystem works and how we're just a small part of it. And we almost want to leave no impact at all other than, removing the marine debris and trying to eliminate some of the threats. We know we're doing positive work. We know we're, making a positive difference, but we almost want to be like ghosts out there where the wildlife don't see us. They just happen to have, safer areas to live, nest, nurse, whatever it may be.
The Papahānaumokuākea Marine Debris Project travels up to the area multiple times per year. There are plenty of opportunities to support their cause or to even join them in their work.
We're a small team trying to eliminate the threats of marine debris from a very large area. And so I think the biggest impact that you could make would be to, follow us on social media, read about us on our website. And then we really encourage people here locally to apply and join the team and, join the fight against marine debris, because the negative connotation or the threats of marine debris don't seem too difficult or don't seem unachievable when you really fall in love with the place. And I think it's really important for people to build a relationship first and then want to protect it. And then all the other stuff, it will come easy. You just can't give up on what you love. Papahānaumokuākea being the ancestral islands or the Kūpuna Islands, you really feel the weight and the responsibility to really, hold yourself up to a higher standard. You're there to do work, whether that's research and conservation. You're there to preserve the place or make the place better. And so it truly is an incredible place.
Even without physically making the journey to Papahānaumokuākea, James wants people to know that anyone and everyone can make a difference.
If you can make a change in your life, whether that's using less single-use plastics or, trying to convert to more reusable, sustainable materials, or the way you spend your money. So, you know, supporting the local fishermen, you can all make an impact to protect not only Papahānaumokuākea, Hawaii in general, but, you know, the oceans and humanity. And so, you know, whether you're living in the mountains or the woods, or you live near the ocean, all of our trash essentially will make its way into the ocean and will impact really pristine, protected areas like Papahānaumokuākea. And although Papahānaumokuākea is protected, there is no physical barrier that actually protects the islands from outside impacts. Everything that we do as people impacts all of us around us. Like, all of us are connected by the oceans.
Papahānaumokuākea is protected by local stewards, state and national governance, and even international regulations. In 2008, Papahānaumokuākea reached international protection status when the International Maritime Organization, a specialized agency of the United Nations, designated it a particularly sensitive sea area to create notification requirements for passing ships and vessels. This same status is shared by the Florida Keys, the Great Barrier Reef, and the Galapagos. In 2010, delegates to the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO, World Heritage Convention unanimously voted to inscribe the monument as a mixed natural and cultural World Heritage Site. This designation not only elevated the area as a natural wonder, but also as a place of overwhelming cultural significance for Native Hawaiians. In the documentary Safe Haven, navigator and president of the Polynesian Voyaging Society, Nainoa Thompson, reflected on the immense work it took for Papahānaumokuākea to receive all of its protections.
This community effort is about making sure people know how special and how important those islands are from a cultural and an ecological point of view, and why we need to protect them. We say those islands are Kūpuna, we say those islands are sacred, and we mean it. All of this, to me, boils down to protecting what we love and what we care for, and making sure we act on it in a way in which we believe is right for not just the islands, but for humanity.
Of the 1,121 UNESCO sites worldwide, just 39 of them fulfill both the natural and cultural criteria. Papahānaumokuākea is recognized alongside the Great Wall of China, the Great Barrier Reef, the Galapagos Islands, and the Pyramids of Egypt. It is one of just 50 Marine World Heritage Sites. In a keynote speech at the 5th International Marine Protected Areas Congress, former NOAA Superintendent Aulani Wilhelm recognized that protecting our oceans did not start with our government, but instead started with our people.
When Papahānaumokuākea was first designated as a coral reef reserve back in 2000, 22 years ago in December, its sheer size was an anomaly, a first of its kind. Only the Great Barrier Reef was protected at this kind of scale. But as I understand it, the driving purposes for protecting the Great Barrier Reef were not to protect a large swath of ocean, but to rather protect the natural heritage of this extraordinary reef that you could see from space as a wondrous World Heritage Site, well deserved. For me, what started as an exciting opportunity to be part of a first ever coral reef expedition, right? We were literally the first people that many of these animals had ever seen, right? It became a request by elders in my community to lead Hawaii's effort to protect the majority of the longest archipelago on the planet. Most everyone expected our efforts to fail. Instead, it ignited a whole new genre of marine conservation. Its success and subsequent expansion efforts enabled Papahānaumokuākea, like you can see on this screen, to be expanded, quadrupled. It is now 3.5 times the size of California.
Aulani Wilhelm has spoken many times on the importance of weaving Native Hawaiian culture into the protection, regulation, and management of the area. Here she is in the documentary Papahānaumokuākea, where nature and culture are one.
Papahānaumokuākea has helped us to bring culture into the equation in a way that's respectful to Hawaiian knowledge, values, and people. So why is that important? Well, we've been stripped pretty much from our land and sea in a very short amount of time. Pressures on our people, pressures on our ways of life, pressures on the uniqueness of what Hawaii and our Hawaiian culture and practices are to the planet, for humanity, the human heritage of our planet. And by being able to bring Hawaiians to the table, by creating tables comfortable for Hawaiians, by having Hawaiians be part of advisory boards, by having a cultural working group to review permits. And what I'm probably most proud of is that we worked really hard to create pathways and jobs, to work with the next generation and bring up students that could be impacted by their experiences and have it frame how they see their future.
For more than a decade, Native Hawaiians have applied various kanaka-weaving methodologies throughout the Papahānaumokuākea management planning process. Major strides have been made since the days of military management, but there is still so much more to do to bring Native Hawaiians into the process. However, these protections are not guaranteed. Aulani Wilhelm spoke to Olelo TV in 2017 when then-President Trump indicated that Papahānaumokuākea, alongside other national monuments, might have their protective statuses re-evaluated.
So there's this tool that presidents have that was given to them under an Antiquities Act that gives presidents the authority through a proclamation create a national monument. Papahānaumokuākea was the first place where this presidential power was tested in waters, in the ocean. This tool is now being challenged, not just for marine monuments, but monuments on land as well. It's something that under this administration that is being questioned on whether or not presidents should be able to have that kind of authority, and if so, should they be able to revoke that. So this current president issued an order asking for these monuments, a series of monuments, to be reviewed, including Papahānaumokuākea and the Pacific Marine National Monuments, to either think about downsizing them or removing their designation altogether.
Decades of effort, education, and hard-fought advocacy has garnered Papahānaumokuākea of all of the protections that it has today. But there is still so much more work to do. According to Dr. Kekuavakikiloi, the next step is sanctuary status.
The sanctuary designation process is kind of the capstone for, a good 20 years of us fighting for protection of this area. No place is safe in today's modern world, and we're layering this protection on so that there's no reversing this. That we affirm that this place is sacred and that it's worth protecting.
What's next for Papahānaumokuākea?
I think it's really important to just protect what you love. And so when you go to Papahānaumokuākea, you really feel this inspiration, or it stokes the fire within you, and you really start to build the relationship with the place.
Next episode, we talk about sanctuary status, what that might mean for Papahānaumokuākea, and what you can do to help.